Open up your Bibles to one of my favorite chapters in all of the Bible, Hebrews chapter 11. Hebrews chapter 11. We're week 5. We just have one more week left in our series after this week. Next Sunday, I'm finishing up the series, A Church Worth Building. We've been talking about the culture and the ethos of our church. That if we're going to build a church, right, if we're going to put our hand to the plow and we're going to give God our very best, then it better be worth it. Like at the end of the day, right, this thing better be worth it. And so we've been talking about different things that I think should be the foundations of church life. And I want to preach today from this topic. Here's the title of my message, Flying Blind. Flying Blind. It's out of Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. It says this, it says, now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. For by it the people of old received their commendation. By faith, we understand that the universe was created by the word of God, so that what is seen was not made out of things that are visible. And then I'm going to skip down to verse 6. I'm going to skip a few verses, but it says this. It says, and without faith, it is impossible to please him. Isn't that interesting? Like, notice it doesn't say without your spotless character, it is impossible to please him. It doesn't say without your perfect Bible reading. It doesn't say without your perfect church attendance. It says, and without faith, it is impossible to please him. For whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. By faith, Noah, being warned by God concerning events as yet unseen, in reverent fear, constructed an ark for the saving of his household. By this he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness that comes by faith. Come on, let's pray together this afternoon over the preaching of God's word. Lord, we bend our ear towards you today. We ask you to speak. And God, we ask that when we leave here this afternoon, God, that we will have left having heard from you, having been encouraged by your word, and having been changed. Lord, we didn't come here to hear from a person. We came to hear because we know that a word from you, it can change things and it can set things in motion that can change everything. So Lord, I pray that you would have your way today. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. There really are a variety of ways that you and I ascertain or garner confidence, isn't there? Like there's all kinds of ways that you and I grow in our confidence. And, one of those ways that we grow in our confidence, like for example, like we have people that get on our worship team and they don't have tons of experience. They have a great singing voice, but they don't have tons of experience. And for me, one of the coolest things to watch them do is to get more and more confidence through reps. Through opportunities. So one of the ways that we grow in confidence is by, getting reps and by doing stuff. And another way that we get confidence sometimes is through a particular outfit. Come on. You ever put something on and you kind of look at the mirror? You're kind of like, this is gonna be a good day today. This is gonna be a good day, right? You just kind of have that confidence. Sometimes we get confidence by doing a good job at work. Right? Come on, sometimes we get promoted in a job or we get a pay raise, and it feels good to do good. And so when you're at work and people notice what you're doing, you can get some confidence from that. Another way that we get confidence is maybe through who we're dating or who we're married to. Right? Like some days if I'm not feeling that great about myself, I just like look over and look at Christina. And I'm like, I'm pretty good. Like I just, sometimes you just got to, you got to work it out. If your confidence is low, you got to work it out and figure some things out. But here's what we know. As we find confidence in all these things, here's what we really know in our heart of hearts. We know that as we derive confidence from those things, that is really sinking sand. That as we get confidence from those things, right? In the same time, you can feel like you're deriving tons of confidence from your career or from your work until you have one weird meeting with your boss. And then all of a sudden, that confidence that you had, you no longer have. Or that relationship that you once had and you no longer have. And so we have to be careful that we're not gaining confidence from the wrong things. And I can tell you this, I think there is a place that many of us in this room get confidence from that can be damaging. And I would even dare say that this place is what I call the king of confidence in our culture right now. It is the place where I see most people garner their confidence from, and it's this place, information. Information. Like any WebMDers out there? Where are the WebMDers? Let me see your hand. The WebMDers. Okay, cool. All the people that are hypochondriacs, just raise their hand. In our right? WebMDer, right? You're like, I think I have the black lung pop. Like, you just instantly, it's like, you're a little bit of a hypochondriac maybe, and you go to WebMD, and it gives you some sort of comfort. But the problem with WebMD is it gives you like worst case scenario. It's like, it could be a cough or it could be cancer. Like, I don't know, like, it actually, doesn't necessarily help you, but information is something that we go to and we try to derive tons of confidence, which, by the way, is why Google has turned into an enterprise. Because we just love information. Like, don't you miss the day when we could lie to each other honestly? Like, I don't know if I want to live in a place where we can't lie to each other without getting fact-checked on the spot. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just don't know if I want to live in that kind of place. But, right, we can't even lie to each other. Why? Because all of us have information at, like, we have access at our fingertips through Google. And I actually looked up a couple of things about Google that I thought were unbelievable. Number one, this is incredibly fascinating. Google currently is worth over $100 billion. Google. Worth over $100 billion. Google right now employs more than 61,000 people. It is, I thought this was fascinating. It is the second most valued brand in the world. Google. In fact, even the name of their company has been turned into a verb, right? Like, oh, I should Google it. In fact, even when you use a search engine that isn't Google, you still think you Googled it. Right? I mean, it's the term we use for looking up information. And it's crazy that a search engine, after all, that's what it is. It's crazy that a search engine can grow to that magnitude, and I think it speaks to our insatiable appetite for more information, for knowing more and more stuff. And I think information is good, right? We want information. Like, you probably want your doctors to make decisions based on good information. But I do think information can also be a liability. Information can be a liability. I wrote down a few ways that I think information is a liability. Number one, information can produce fear. Information can produce fear. Like, Christine and I were at the airport one time. We were in Tampa, and we were on that little shuttle thing, right? You know, the shuttle thing that takes you kind of from, where you park, and you get in there, and it takes you to your gates. And we're on there, and I'm kind of standing there, and I'm holding on to the bar, and I'm kind of hanging out, and Christina's sitting down. And she's looking at me, and she's kind of going, and I'm like, what? And she goes, do you have any idea how many people put their hands on that bar that you are holding? And to be honest, 30 seconds before she said that, I was fine. I was perfectly complacent with putting my hand on this bar and standing here. I was not thinking about how many people have not washed their hands and then put their hand on this bar. But when she gave me the information, I was concerned. The other day, I'm hanging out at the house, just chilling out, watching TV, feeling great about life, right? Just hanging out. And I have the remote in my hand, and I'm kind of just like resting the remote on my lips. And she walks in. And she goes, what are you doing? And I was like, what? Like, I didn't know. I was like, what? She goes, do you have any idea, like, how many germs are on that remote control that is just resting against your face? Like, stop doing that. Like, isn't it incredible how information that is supposed to free us up actually causes us fear? Information, a liability of information can be fear. Here's another liability of information. Information boxes us in. Information boxes us in. Come on, have you ever been trying to think of a song? Like, you're trying to think of a song, you're trying to think of like the melody of a song, but there's another song playing in the background. Like, have you ever had this happen? You're trying to think of a song and you're kind of like, you're trying to find the note. You're not really even sure how the melody goes because all you can hear is this other song. Well, what is that? I think that's how information works sometimes. We're getting so much information that our creativity goes away, our ability to dream goes away, our ability to think outside of the box goes away. Why? Because we have too much information. In fact, when we planted Grace City Church, for me, one of the biggest tensions when we were launching our church was this. It was, I wanted to get information as to how other successful people have done it, but I didn't want to get so much information that we would lose our originality. So I wanted to get information, right? It's wise to learn from people that have gone ahead. Like if you're going to start a business, it would probably stand to reason that you should sit down with people that have started a business. However, what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to get so much information that it didn't allow God to breathe a specific kind of thing that he wants to do in Grace City Church. When we have so much information, it can box us in. And then finally, and this is a big one, information is inferior to the power of God. Information is inferior to the power of God. Like you just read the Bible. Like just pick a chapter, any chapter. And you start reading the Bible. And what you will see is you will see people that did things against all odds. That in full view of discouraging information, they stepped out and they continued to do amazing, amazing things. And so you and I got to be careful sometimes that we're not deriving confidence in something that is inferior to the power of God. Because sometimes we don't step out in faith and we don't do things that God is calling us to do because we have too much information. And we're actually, it's not really going to work. I made my pros and cons list and I've done this and I've tried it. But if it's something that God has put in you, the pros and cons list doesn't mean too much. And so if we're going to live like this, we have to understand that information is good, but it can be a liability. I remember I was a little guy, and it was the first time, in my memory that I'd ever done the eye test. You know, like the eye test where like you cover your eye and you read like, sometimes it's different letters, sometimes it's just a bunch of E's and you're just doing this the whole time, right? And you're telling it what direction it's going. And remember doing the hearing test when you were growing up too? Isn't it funny how much pride we take about silly things? Like I would be doing the hearing test, like getting real cocky. Like the little beep would go, and I'm like, I guarantee nobody else heard that one, but I heard it. You just, it's amazing how cocky you can get, And so sure enough, I'm doing the eye test, and I cover my right eye. To me, it's like everything is a competition. And so I cover my right eye, and I'm like reading the bottom line like it's nothing. They're like, hey, can you read the top line? And I'm like, I read the bottom one. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said bottom. My fault, my bad. I thought you wanted me to read the bottom, right? And I'm getting all cocky. I'm like, I am good at vision. Like, I am good at this. I'm getting, it's just, God has blessed me. And then said, okay, cover your left eye. And when I covered my left eye, I immediately started bawling. The reason why I started crying is because as a little guy, and like I was like 17, and no, I'm just kidding. Little guy. And I cover my left eye, and I immediately start bawling because I know my eye is open, but I couldn't see anything. And I start panicking, I start freaking out. And what we found out is that I was born with a birth defect where I couldn't see out of my right eye. I was blind in my right eye. And what's crazy is that it wasn't anything that we could fix, and it wasn't anything, because I was born like this, and just wasn't anything that we could fix. And so over the years, whenever people find that out, they'll say things like, well, like how do you drive? Like, how do you even drive? And I'm like, well, if you ask my friends, people close to me, very poorly. That's what they would say, right? That's what they'd say. People go, well, like you played sports all growing up, you played college basketball, like how did you do that? And the only thing that I can think of to say is, well, I was born like this, so it's all I ever knew. So I didn't know any different. So for me, like seeing with this, kind of angle of vision is all I've ever known. So I don't know what it would feel like. In fact, I'd probably be freaked out. It'd probably be like sensory overload if all of a sudden I could see over here. So I'm like, I don't know. It's all I've ever known. And this is the question that I would have for us today, is that what would your life and my life look like if we made living by faith normative? Like when people look at our lives and they're like, man, I can't, how do you just kind of seem to make faith decisions? There's wisdom and there's practicalities, but it seems like you're making like faith decisions. What would it look like if you just, I don't really know. It doesn't feel that impressive. It's just kind of what I know. It's just kind of how I live my life. You see, I want my life, to be lived in such a way where it's normative to live by faith. Where it's not a one-time event of a story that I'm telling from 7 years ago. See, I think that's why a lot of times we have these stories that we tell is because we so infrequently step out. And that's why we tell stories from 5 years ago when we did it. And we tell stories from 7 years ago when we did it. And we tell stories from 10 years ago when we did it because we don't have enough stories today. We don't have enough stories from this week. We don't have enough stories from this month or in this season of our life. And so here's my point. My only point today is this, is that a church worth building is one where faith is bigger than what we can see. A church worth building is one where faith is bigger than what we can see. I love how Hebrews chapter 11 starts out. It says, now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. For by it the people of old received their commendation. By faith we understand that the universe was created by the word of God, so that what is seen was not made out of things that are visible. I wonder what you'd say, like if you and I were to go out to lunch right after this, and I were to say, hey, what's on your resume? Like your physical resume. Some of you probably haven't looked at your resume in so long, to be honest, you probably wouldn't even know. Because so many times now the way we get jobs is like, we have a relationship and we interview, or maybe somebody, notices you're doing a great job. And some of you work for yourself, and so you've never had to have a resume, like whatever the case may be. But I always think resumes are a fascinating thing. In fact, literally just like this last week, we connected with our staff member that kind of runs our HR side of what we do for our church. And we were like, hey, do we have resumes on file for like the people that work here? Like, who is Chase really? Like, I don't know, like who is John? Like, who is he? Like, I don't know. He just kind of showed up one day and we hired him. I don't know, right? Just kidding. It's not really how it works, but you know what I'm saying. And he was like, no, we don't have resumes. And I go, okay, right? Because we know all these people really well. But I'm like, let's get resumes on file. And resumes are funny when you first start out, huh? Because you don't really have anything. You don't have anything to put on it. And so you'll like make up stuff. Like you'll put stuff on there that's not even like a relevant skill for a job. You're like, I can hold my breath underwater for 48 seconds. You just need something that goes in that slot. You just need to put something on your resume. Well, here's a great question. As you and I are building our life with God, is what do we put on our resume? When it comes to our relationship with God, what should go on the resume? What should you and I desire to put on the resume? And I think a lot of times we're putting a lot of stuff on there that God's like, I care about that, but it's not like a top 3 thing I'm looking for in a candidate to use in a profound way. What we find in the scriptures is that faith ought to be the thing that is on our resume. That faith has to be the thing. In fact, I'm a firm believer in this, is that faith is the thing that most honors God, and I think faith is the thing that God honors most. That faith is the thing that, it's not about being perfect. It's not about, read the Bible. Those people that God used were messed up. Like, come on, you ever read the Bible? Really read it. And you're like, it's like Peter spent every day with Jesus for 3 years. He did like GCLI before GCLI was a thing. And at the end of like 3 years, he's still cutting people's ears off. Like if one of our GCLI cut an ear off after being with us for 3 years, we're like, we have failed. We have failed. Right? These are imperfect people filled with faith. And I think faith is a thing that God honors, and I think it most honors God. By the way, that's how the people of old received their commendation. What did God look at? He looked at their faith. So many Walt Disney stories, right? So many incredible Walt Disney stories. The guy was a legend. But I think probably one of the most common ones that I've heard a lot, but it's a really cool story that I think applies here is, they started the construction on Walt Disney World right up here up the road. And before it was over, Walt Disney passed away. Walt Disney died. And it came time, everything's done, and it's time to dedicate it and, kind of have their grand opening. And so Walt Disney's wife is sitting on a stage and along with other Disney executives. And one of the executives kind of leans over to his wife and says, man, it's just a shame that Walt couldn't see this. And she goes, well, no, he could. And that's why we're all here. And I thought, what an awesome story. I'm like, what? Come on, isn't it great when somebody says the perfect thing at the perfect time? And I thought, what an amazing thing to say. But here's where I've come to at this journey and at this junction of my life is this. I don't just want to tell stories of other people with visions and stepping out in faith, and I don't just want to read about it. I want to have my own stories. Come on. I want to live in such a way where, no, I have my own stories of stepping out in faith, and that you and I get to tell our grandkids about things that we stepped out and did, and that we went for it. And while we had breath in our lungs, we just didn't make it through the day, but we lived our life with faith. We could see things that weren't there, and we could go for things that everybody else couldn't see because God put something in our heart, because God challenged us and God had spoken to us. That's the kind of life that I want to live. And then in verse 6, it says, and without it, you can't please him. For whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. So I think one of the biggest challenges as we're following God is to keep faith at the centerpiece of the plate. To let faith be the star of the meal. I think other times, sometimes we get bored with faith. And so we start adding stuff to it. Christina, my wife, is an amazing cook, which is awesome because I can't cook at all. So it's a great relationship that we have. It's a great relationship that we have. And in our house, the day usually goes, we'll look at our calendar in the morning and we can realize or not, okay, are we both gonna be home tonight at a reasonable hour where we'll have dinner? A lot of times we have meetings at night, but usually if a couple days a week we're at home at night having dinner, that is a huge win for us. And so on particular days where that's gonna be the case, Christina will go, okay, we're both gonna be home tonight. What do you want for dinner? And in our house, Christina's an amazing cook, and we usually have about 8 to 10 things that are on Christina's menu, right? There's about 8 to 10 things that we cycle through, that we rotate through, and then sometimes things get taken off, and then new things get added. It's kind of the way the menu goes at our house. And so I may say, oh, this sounds great. She'll go, okay, that sounds great. And either myself or her will go to the grocery store that day, pick up maybe a thing or two that we need to complete that meal, and we'll go home, and she'll make that meal. And sometimes, and I don't know why she does this. I can't explain it. I don't know. I'm not sure. But every once in a while, she will deviate from the menu. So every once in a while, I'll ask for salmon and rice. And I know what Andrew Gard's salmon and rice tastes like. And I gotta be honest, it is perfection, okay? It is perfection. But every once in a while, I think she gets bored with it, and so she'll add something new to it. She'll mix it up, right? And I can quickly taste this. Right when I take a bite, I'll go, got a question. Like, why would you mess with perfection? It was perfect just the way that it was. And she'll go, oh, I got bored. Or, oh, I like to mix it up. I don't like when she mixes it up. Why? Because I was like, no, let what it is be what it is. Like, let what it is be the star. Now, I would encourage you today, don't add all this stuff. Like, let faith be the star, and then let everything else flow out of that. I think sometimes we're just so, we got to do this, and we're trying to please God, and it's like, just stay in faith. And when you stay in faith, your life and everything flows out of that. And I believe that living by faith is just like tithing. It's a very similar way in which it works. Now in our church, we believe in it. We believe that tithing is a biblical principle of giving 10% of your income to God's house for the work of the ministry. And many people in our church tithe, and they're incredibly faithful people. Our whole staff tithes. It's a value of ours. And I really believe, in fact, that's why we're in a building, and that's why there's air conditioning, and that's why there's lights and all that stuff. And I really believe that the two parallel each other. And what I mean by that is this: tithing is the principle of everything I have that God has given me, it has been given to me by God. So everything I have is a gift from God. Everything. We believe that to our core. Everything I have is a gift from God. Some might say, well, I work really hard for that. Yeah, but I actually even believe that your gifts are a gift from God. So even you having the ability to work, to earn an income, to make money was granted and afforded to you by the grace and the mercy of God. And so what we believe is that everything we have is God. So God gave it to us, and then we give him back something. And as we give him back something, it expands and stretches our capacity to be able to handle more. And I believe faith is the exact same way. I believe faith is the exact same way, that God gives it to us, right? The Bible even says that God graces us with faith in order to receive his grace. It's an incredible concept. And that we have received it, and as we step out in faith, even in the most minuscule ways, as we give it back to God, it stretches our capacity then to later on down the life take greater steps of faith. Like there's probably been times in your life where you've done something and maybe, just maybe, you thought it was God and it felt like God. I want to have the band come up. I want to finish with this thought. And maybe just maybe you felt like it was God telling you to do it. And maybe it wasn't like in an audible voice, like do this. But you just felt like it was God. And have you ever done something like that? And then you look back and you're like, I can't believe I did that. Come on, you ever look back and you're like, how in the heck did I do that? Well, what is that? This is what I believe. I believe that God gives us faith in a season for a reason. God gives us faith in a season and for a reason. So it says it's impossible to please God without it, and whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. He gives it, we give it back, and it enlarges our capacity to receive more. God gives faith in a season for a reason. I remember when Christina called me. I remember it was like it was yesterday when she called me. I believe it was in 2014, and she said, hey, I feel like God is telling me that we're supposed to plant a church in Lakeland. And I remember without hesitation, I go, man, I think so too. And she wasn't expecting that. She thought I was gonna laugh it off, right? And I go, man, I think so too. And so I remember shortly thereafter, I went to my employers and I said, hey, I feel like we're supposed to plant a church. I don't think I'm supposed to work here much longer. And I think we're supposed to plant a church in Lakeland. I think that's what we're supposed to do. Please don't fire me right now on the spot. And I remember we came up with a timeline of, okay, this is when I'm going to be done. And because I had to quit my job in order to do this. And we had X amount of dollars in savings. We knew we could live up to this point, with zero income coming in, and we can do it. Okay, we can do it. We got it. We're okay. We're okay. We're okay. Like if you got to say it 3 times, you might not be okay. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. And we did, and I remember I remember this like it was yesterday. I remember we were bringing in equipment that wasn't ours. We borrowed it without asking. But we gave it back. And at Trinity Church, and we had interest services there, and we had once a month services, and we were starting to go, okay, we're going to plant a church. And then on September 20th, 2015, right in this building, we launched with 2 services. We had a 9:30 and an 11:30. And I remember I was standing up on this stage for 2 services, the good old days, 2 services. That was nice. I used to look younger. And this room was packed out for 2 services, and it was just unbelievable. And here we are 2.5 years later, and we have an incredible team and amazing people, and God's doing unbelievable things, and we are just getting started. We're not even in the starting blocks yet. I just feel like God's gonna do so much. But check this out. I get calls all the time from people all over the country. And they're like, hey, Andrew, I was really inspired by what you guys did, and hey, man, I'm gonna plant a church. I'm gonna quit my job, and I'm gonna do what you did. I'm gonna plant a church. And honestly, I gotta be honest. Like, we're not gonna podcast this part. I'm gonna be honest right here, right? Is I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, why would somebody do that? I'm like, don't do it, bro. You got a job, like you have retirement, like this is like you have a good life, like you're fine. Like, why would somebody do that? Do not do, like, why would you do that? And I'm genuinely like forgetting that 2.5 years ago we did that. And I'm like, I can't believe we did that. That's not even in my personality profile. Like, I'm not this crazy risk taker. I'm like, I get up at the same time every day, brush my teeth this many times on the left, brush my teeth the same amount of times on the right, comb my hair the same amount of times on the right, comb my hair the same amount of times on the left. I don't know why you're laughing. Go to the same Starbucks. I'm a routine guy. I'm not the guy that quits my job. But God gives you faith in a season for a reason. And you will look back on your life, and you'll look back and you're like, I have no idea how I did that or why I did that. I could have went a safer route. Could have went an easier way. Come on, and I look over our church, and there are all kinds of, I'm just looking at Rainey right now, just thinking of her. I'm looking at people in our church that have stepped out in faith and have tried things and are started their own business and have worked really, really hard. And some of you are even getting involved in church is a huge step of faith. Or getting on a team or going through Growth Track, getting in a city group, drawing closer in relationship is a huge step of faith. But God will give you faith in a season for a reason. Don't worry about faith for tomorrow. 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 Don't worry about having faith for an abstract thing down the road. God, give me today my daily bread. I need faith for today. I need faith for this season. And I'm telling you, check it out. If you step out in little ways, you'll start building the faith muscle so that when God really asks you to step out, when God really says, set off from the water, you'll actually be able to do it. There is a reward on the other side of faith. And then finally, verse 7 talks about Noah, who built the ark. It says, by faith, Noah, being warned by God concerning events as yet unseen, in reverent fear constructed an ark for the saving of his household. In 1954, something happened that had never happened before. And a guy named Roger Bannister ran the first recorded, there had been rumors of other people, but it was really the first recorded and official sub 4 minute mile. It had never happened before. It had never taken place. And for some reason, he had it in his heart to run a 4 minute mile. Like, first of all, I think that might be a plan of demonic proportion. But nonetheless, the illustration works. But he for some reason had it in his heart to run a 4 minute mile. Now, what's crazy is he had no model. He had no example. Nobody had never done it before. So he wasn't inspired by something that had happened. He was inspired by the possibility of something that has never happened. And he began to practice, and in 1954, he ran the first sub 4 minute mile. You wanna know what's crazy? Just 50 years later, a 4 minute mile is like the industry standard. There's high school kids in the United States right now running sub 4 minute miles. But because one guy did something that he had never seen, it became the standard of everybody around him. What would it look like in the L, baby? What would it look like in Lakeland, Florida, in Polk County, in the 863, if a bunch of people said, look, I think we gotta try something that's never been done that might inspire other people all over the world to do what God has called them to do? What would it look like if we just said, look, I haven't seen it yet, but just because I haven't seen it doesn't mean God hasn't called me to do it. And by the way, this plays out on a macro level for us as a church, but it also plays out in an individual level in your life. Some of you, you've never had a model for a healthy marriage. You've never seen it. You didn't grow up in a home that had a healthy marriage. And I want to encourage you today, just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean that God hasn't called you to do it. Some of you, you've never seen a model for great parenting. You didn't grow up in a home where you felt like you had great parents. Just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean God hasn't called you to do it. Some of you in this room, like you're afraid to draw close in relationship with people because maybe you've been hurt. You're like, man, I just haven't seen friendship go that great for me. Just because you haven't seen it yet doesn't mean God isn't calling you to do it. In fact, I would venture to say, did you know that our life is driven by fear? And there is either the godly reverent, like the holy kind of fear, or there's the fear of this world. We're gonna be driven by one of those two things at all times. And the godly, holy, reverent type of fear plays out in two ways. Number one, it plays out in this way. We do what God tells us to do because there is a fear of his authority, right? All of us should have a good, healthy fear of authority, right? Like when our parents tell us to do something, we obey because they are our authority. Well, God trumps all authority. But then there's this other kind of fear that compels me and that really drives me, and it's this. The fear of not knowing what could have been if I would have stepped out. You wanna know what keeps me going in the morning? You wanna know when I get up? You wanna know what I'm thinking about for our church in the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years? It is this fear to go, man, what if we don't give it everything we got? You want to know what keeps me going? In fact, what keeps me going is the reality that I can't see it. That's what excites me. What excites me is that I can tell you this, I would have had never guessed 2.5 years ago that our church would look like it does now, 26 months later. I wouldn't have been able to dream it. I wouldn't have been able to guess it, but I knew there was something that God had called us to do that we had not seen yet. And I believe as a church corporately, God is calling us to do some things we've never seen. And it's wrapped up in a phrase that I was up in my office praying about a month ago, and God just dropped this phrase in my heart, and it's literally the only thing that's written on my whiteboard right now. Usually on my whiteboard, if you go up, there's like each of our teams listed out and a bunch of things that I need to address with those teams. That's usually what it is. But right now, there are 2 words on that board. And it's these 2 words, generational revival. I was praying the other day and just boom, generational revival just popped into my mind. And here's why I think it's so relevant to our church at this point and this season and this time in Lakeland, Florida. Is over the last 40 years, 50 years or so, there's been 2, what in churchdom, church world, we would call 2 revivals that have taken place in our city. And I think it's evident that God wants to do something in our city. I think it is his heart. I think it is his desire. And there's been 2 revivals. One of those was played out in a local church in our context that had exploded, and we're having amazing, amazing things happening. And it was a revival. In fact, this last Sunday night, after the 6 p.m. service, I was sitting down talking to a guy that talked about how he was so shaped at that church in those meetings that were happening night after night after night. And he was just, this is when he was a kid, 25, 30, 35 years ago. And he just goes, man, I was shaped so much in those moments. And then years after that one, there was another revival that was kind of centered around signs and wonders. And what's interesting is this, is that there is still the fruit of some of those things, but those things no longer exist. That church no longer exists, both the physical location and the actual church. And that tent meeting that was taking place no longer exists. And I'm not saying those things were perfect, and I'm not saying those things were bad. I'm just using it to say what I think God is calling us to do is a generational thing. Not something that is around for the next 5 years, not something that is around for the next 10 years or 15 years, but something that our children's will be the beneficiaries of. And just because we haven't seen it yet doesn't mean God's not calling us to do it. And I want to live my whole life while God gives me breath on this planet. And I want you to live your whole life going, God, I'm just going to trust you. I might not be able to see the next step, and I might not know where my foot's going to hit. But what I do know is if I'm taking steps of faith in Christ's name, it will not fall on sinking sand, but it will fall on solid rock. A church worth building is one where faith is bigger than what we can just see.